welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender HD. If you want to follow me there on Twitter, and it's Monday, and you know what we do on Mondays? It's Mondays with McCool, joined by James McCool of Pay Dirt DFS, the co-author with me on the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass that you could pick up at theoryofdfs.com. So give me those thummy thumbs in the YouTube chat. I see you guys in there. Thummy thumbs, subscribe, scribes, notification, belly bells. Do whatever you want. Click on whatever you want. Good morning. Going over some stuff from yesterday's slate with James. Do you want to get it out of the way since it's a running joke? People are asking now, what's going to be the player that you have like 7 points higher projected than anyone else in God's green earth? Okay. So why don't we get that out of the way? In my aggregate, okay, the top raw point score. Let's just go the top raw point scoring players in my aggregate. Adams, Hunt, Cup, Hill. Is that close to yours at least?
Adams, Hunt, Cup, Hill. Let's see. Let me remove quarterbacks here.
Yeah, removing quarterbacks.
Pretty close. Yeah, I had Adams and Hill and Cup in the top 5.
Okay.
The other two. What are your other two?
Which players do you think? I mean, you must see stuff around the industry. So I mean, like, yeah. What players do you think that you're unreasonably over projecting?
You mean reasonably over? And
you think it's reasonable, but I think it's unreasonable. But
Cortland Sutton again.
It's hard for me to say. I wouldn't have thought it was Cortland Sutton and then OBJ the week before. So I don't know what to ask about.
Well, my top 5 in terms of not quarterbacks were Tyreek Hill at the top at 26, Devontae Adams at 25.5, Jamar Chase at 22, Cortland Sutton at 21.2, and Cooper Kupp at 20.88. Yeah.
The Chase and the Sutton. Yeah, that's.
So Chase is the one that I thought was going to be like the weird one this week. When I saw that, I was like,
Who do you think?
Yeah.
Chase?
Jamar Chase. I thought it was Jamar Chase.
Well, you have him like 4 points projected higher than I do.
Yeah, okay.
But you still have Cortland Sutton 6 points, 5 points higher projected.
And he's still crushing.
I guess so. Actually, yesterday he probably should have had more points.
He probably should have.
Right,
I agree.
20. He probably should have had something like 32 or something.
Yeah, dude, I was the train for that team, man.
What did you have Mixon at?
Mixon. I think I projected low on Mixon. Yeah, I had Mixon at 13, but I liked Mixon more than that. Like, I know why Mixon was that low, but I liked him more than that for sure.
How'd you only get 13 on Mixon? Were you not projecting him to play like 85 to 90% of the snaps?
So I was projecting him well in terms of his market share, but the Bengals didn't necessarily pop in terms of their Vegas stuff.
Yeah, but you had Chase at 22. So how is that possible?
Right. Well, that's because they like to pass in the red zone too. They don't really like to run that much in the red zone. Hold on.
They didn't have to. They got 30-yard passes.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you. I had Mixon for 65% of the rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, and like 15% of receiving touchdowns, 10% of receiving yards.
Who are you giving 30? You were giving Chris Evans 35% of the workload?
No, I had Joe Burrow at 10% of the rushing yards. I had Jamar Chase at 1. I had Chris Evans at 25.
Right. Well, I think that was too high.
Sure, that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
I thought maybe that would be the one that it would be. I thought you'd be over.
No,
because I actually saw Mixon at 17, and like I mean, if we look at my exposures, I'll bring them up on the screen. Like I was playing like more of them than the field. I mean, at the running back position, which I mean, I kind of play as a running back roulette.
Yeah, that's what I did this week.
So like, I'm never going to play like 1,000,000% of someone. But my top one, I played 36% Hunt, 28% Chuba Hubbard. What was your projection on him? Because I think 17. Around the industry he was I think he was under projected. Other than the Blitz had him much higher because, like, based on the last game, like Rod Smith was gone, like,
Right.
yeah, you almost have to give him everything, and he's getting like 5 to 7 targets.
Yeah, I had him at 17 with a ceiling of 30.
Okay.
Which is I think that I felt pretty good about that one. I had Kareem Hunt at 17.6. I was hoping to be under on him. What did the industry have for Kareem Hunt?
Way higher, 22.
Way high. Okay, good. I wanted that. I didn't think that he was going to get the vast majority of the work. He ended up getting injured. Like, I had some good fortune on that for sure, but I didn't think that he was going to get near as much of the work as people thought. And 17.6, I mean, that's still a good projection for 6,200.
Right.
That's not bad.
If you go by what happened to him, I mean, he played nearly every snap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought, based on the comments from the coaches, they have that Thursday game. I thought they were going to take it a little bit easier on him because he did have those 2 injuries. So I wanted
Baker helped him on that by not playing well.
Yeah, I know. It's beautiful. But I still had Kareem Hunt. I mean, he was my second highest overall projected running back, and I even brought him down a bit. So I'm happy about bringing him down there. But I'm usually under the industry on running backs. And that just naturally comes with, and that's usually why the players that I'm higher on are wide receivers. So like that Jamar Chase versus Joe Mixon thing, that's pretty typical for my projection set because I lean into ceilings a little bit more. So like naturally wide receivers having a higher ceiling, and the way that teams play, if a team like the Colts, like I was probably lower on Jonathan Taylor overall. I still liked him, but I mean, he's just not getting work. He's not getting.
And truthfully, he didn't. And he got there on
an 85-yard rushing play.
Or touchdown run.
Right. So like I'm happy to be under on that. Mostly my models have just been saying like these teams, we have so few running backs that are like true workhorses this year, true workhorses. And to have a projection over, 22, 23 fantasy points, you've got to be getting a lot of work on a team that loves to rush in the red zone, because that's where the vast majority of running back points come from, is in the red zone. And people argue to be like, oh, well, Derrick Henry, and he breaks off these long runs, Jonathan Taylor, but I'm not going to project that. Like, you don't project 80-yard breakout runs because they're a dime a dozen. Like, they do not, or no, not a dime a dozen. They're super rare. So if most touchdowns happen in the red zone, then I'm projecting a lot of teams that run more in the red zone. So like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt on Cleveland, who only pass 36% of the time or something in the red zone. Those guys are going to have a higher projection on their base because they have a higher touchdown expectation. Whereas a team like Tampa Bay, for Leonard Fournette to have a really good projection, they would have to run more in the red zone, but he still gets good reception, still gets good receiving work. So he projects okay most of the time. But most of the time, my models are under on running backs. So I expect to be under on Kareem Hunt. I expect to be under on Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon.
How about Darrell Henderson?
Darrell Henderson, I had him at 15.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're under.
Yeah,
compared to, I mean, even if it's 2 points under. I mean, but understand, James, that on Draftkings or FanDuel, you can still have to play 2 running backs.
You do.
So based on your projections, you're more likely to have a wide receiver flex than you would have a running back. But you still have to play 2 running backs. And the point that I'm making, and you are with the 80-yard touchdown, and also running in the red zone and getting stuffed right on the goal line. The running back variance on ceiling could be very high, which is the main reason why, like, I look how many running backs on a 10-game slate I had in my pool in lineups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 running backs. Yeah, it's some more than others, but I'm less concerned about, like, I'm not jamming in Khalil Herbert into like 80% of my lineups. I'm not jamming in, Dalvin Cook. Oh, no one's playing him, right? Is he good? And into like 1,000,000% of my lineups. It's like whatever lineups they fit in. I'm gonna, cap at certain thresholds. I'm more likely to play a running back if I'm playing the other side of the game, right? So they're more likely to be in lineups together. And then it just, like, I rely on, like, I hope they're in the right lineups. But based on the ownership projections, I think Hubbard and Mixon were under-owned yesterday.
Absolutely. Agree.
I think Jonathan Taylor was wildly over-owned.
Absolutely.
He came in much higher than I had him projected owned at 16.
I had 13. Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah. I had it higher than that. If we look at the ownership here, Jonathan Taylor came in at 19 in the slant and 25 in the millie. So, like, based on that, I actually would have had less of. I mean, it's one of those things when I review the slate. Like the main thing, and we say it in the course. We've said it on past shows. It's better not to review the results of the players, but the process of your decisions. Would you have made the same decision had you known X? And I'm not talking about what happened in the game, but had you known that the field was going to do X? So, like Jonathan Taylor, most of my lineups are geared towards the slant, those types of contests. So, had I known he was 19% owned, like I played him at like in 5% of my lineups at 16% ownership. At 19, maybe he doesn't make any.
Right.
Maybe he only makes 3. I mean, because then he's a higher owned player. You take a look at like Kareem Hunt, I got like perfect. I put at 40. He was 40.9.
I had 40.9.
Right. So like dead on. So like I look at like Mixon, I had him at 12%. And he came in at 15.9 in the slant. So actually, I probably should have had him a slightly less, but still it's close enough. 12 and 15, close enough. Darrell Henderson, I had at 22. I projected at 22. He was 25, right? I had Hubbard at 16, and he came in at 15. So it's like, okay, based on this, I would have had a little bit less Mixon, a little less Henderson, and a little bit more like Herbert. I projected at 24, and he came in at 23.29. So like I'm like dead on these. I take a look at Darrell Williams. I had a 12. He came in at 13.9. So it's like I'm just looking at these things. Is like, is there anything that's dramatically off? That would have changed the constructions that I was building. So like Eckler, I had it at 11%. He came in at 13, but in the millie and the play action, he was 22 and 23% owned. Like if I was playing the millie, I was only getting Eckler in 6% of my lineups as it was, I probably would have had him in 0 lineups.
He's too expensive anyway.
Well, I mean, people go look at, it's recency bias, right? Oh, I did great last game. Okay. But to me, this is how I kind of judge the decisions that I'm making of like, how valuable is this player worth playing? Obviously, guys that are in stacks, you have to add correlation. This is a very basic way of doing so. But as you can see here, even in my player pool, like I'm filling in all these ownership numbers are mine. These are my ownership. Now they come from RotoGrinders ownership as a base. I look at ownership projections throughout the entire industry, and then I modify, I tweak them. And then I'm listening to content throughout the week, and I'm changing it based on that. So like, I take a look and I go, early in the week, maybe I had Cooper Kupp at like 12%, and then I'm like, no, he's 20, right? Tyreek, I only had at 15. And he came in 16 in the slant. So like that's not dramatically, like more often than not, I do this exercise and I'm closer to what it ends up being in the slant than I would be in the millie. Because sometimes I can't necessarily account for how much recency bias there is.
It's hard.
I mean, I don't play the millie, so I don't need to care. But like the millie or the play action, like yes, I take into account, they did well last week. I'm going to bump them up 3-4 percentage points for if I'm playing the millie. But sometimes that could be 8, right? Sometimes they could be wildly overowned. And sometimes it doesn't move the needle at all. It's just for some reason, based on the constructions, it's not fitting at all. Like Jamar Chase in the slant was 16% owned. In the play action, he was 25% owned. I mean, that's based on, he had a great week last week, right? I mean, that type of thing. So like going through using results DB. Now, looking at the owners and go, had I known this, and seeing if even though you could use RotoGrinders, projected ownership, which is part of RotoGrinders Premium, click on the link in the description, get $10 off your first month. I mean, use some common sense yourself. If you don't agree with something, change it. There's no reason. I mean, if James gave me his projections with Cortland Sutton at 22 points, I would have changed it, right?
You shouldn't have.
James, how do you do ownership? Do you just aggregate, or do you tweak anything? Do you run? But because based on your projections, if people were looking at your projections, Cortland Sutton would have been projected for 26% ownership, right? I mean, like you would have, like if you're using your own stuff to make ownership, you would get things that like wouldn't actually happen. So do you just aggregate?
Yeah, I aggregate. I do an aggregate of 5 different sources from around the industry. And then I also run using Lineup HQ. I run 300 lineups and I cap at 75% so that we don't get anything weird. And then I have some algorithms that translate that into ownership as well. I give less weight to that because that's like not super great, but it is helpful to know where the values are. That's how you find, what guys are being forced into lineups because they need to be forced into lineups. Like this week, Khalil Herbert was going to be forced into lineups. Ricky Seals-Jones is going to be forced into lineups just because like that's how you afford these expensive stacks. You have Lamar Jackson on the slate. You have Patrick Mahomes on the slate. So in order to afford these stacks, a lot of the time you have to have these cheaper plays. So I do an aggregate though. I do 5 different sources and then I have that kind of like optimizer algorithm thing that I do. And I come really, really close to yours, and everything you were just listing off. I was within 2 percentage points of everything you just listed off. And you sometimes a little higher, sometimes a little lower, but in the vicinity. And it's funny that you say that I would have had Cortland Sutton at 26% owned because his efficient ownership for me would have been 28% owned.
Right. Well, that's it. Isn't that the point that I'm making? It's like if you put out like what your efficient ownership based on your projections only, mm-hmm. you would expect them to be that on, because really that's what you're doing. Like mm-hmm. based on your projections, like, well, I'm obviously if I think that Cortland Sutton and Jamar Chase is this, like, it's more likely, it's weird to say that if we take a look at Cortland Sutton, take a look at those 2 examples. Cortland Sutton in the slant ended up at 5% owned.
Yeah.
In the play action in the millie, 3. Okay. So if you trusted your projections completely, you would have thought that they were the bet, like Cortland Sutton was the best value play on the entire slate.
Yeah. He was close.
Right. Like from a relative value standpoint of like, you're getting someone that should be 28% owned based on your project. I'm not saying that he should be. I'm saying based on through your eyes. And this is the only way you could judge things is through your own specific eyes.
Yeah.
Because at a 15, 16 point projection, like this is around his efficient ownership, probably 5 to 7%, something like that. Probably mm-hmm. still under owned. But based on yours, it's like, oh, efficient ownership, 28%. He's going to be 5 in the slant. So if you were going to play a balanced strategy, you just play Cortland Sutton in lineups at 28%, and you'd be, near almost over 5 times the field. Yeah. But if you wanted to exploit the field, you would have had him in like twice that many lineups. You would have had him in half your lineups because he was just so valuable. But right. If we take a look at Jamar Chase, so for instance, Jamar Chase was 25% owned in the play action, mm-hmm. 16% owned in the slant. So you're efficient if you were just, in your eyes, going through your projections. At his price, Jamar Chase, probably his efficient ownership, probably somewhere near Sutton's 25-ish, right?
Higher ceiling. So 36.
Oh, 36. Oh, okay. Which means he's much more efficiently owned in the play action than he is in the slant.
Yes.
So you still would have been more worthwhile from an exploitative standpoint to play him in any contest, but you get more value from playing him in the slant than you do in the play action.
Yeah.
Because he was more owned in the play action.
Yeah.
But that's through your eyes. Of course, I don't agree with the projection. So but you can only judge it based on the information that you're looking at. Yeah. But this is the way to figure out. So I'm assuming, you play 3 lineups into the power sweep?
Yep.
I'm assuming you had Chase and Sutton.
I had Sutton. Yes, I didn't end up going with Chase.
How could you have a guy that's the 30th? Why did you
So
play?
there
You
was
thought the Bengals, you didn't want to play him in a stack or something?
right. I didn't think that game really made a good secondary stack, and I liked other main stacks better. So like I could have played him as a one-off if I wanted to, but I preferred a combination of Justin Jefferson and Robbie Anderson, which I was really high on. And then Robbie Anderson gets 11 targets and 11 yards, which kill me. And then I also really liked the Cortland Sutton and Darren Waller combination. I liked a lot of different things more than I liked the Jamar Chase with TJ Hawkinson or Jamar
Or
Chase
DeAndre Swift or something like that.
Yeah, it's just I didn't like that game. I thought the total was bad. So yeah, even though he projected well, if I am MMEing this, if I have 150 lineups, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to end up with like quite a bit of Jamar Chase. But in 3 lineups, I went with a Baltimore stack, a Washington stack, and a Rams stack, and it just didn't work out. Didn't end up on any of them.
And the Rams stack, how did you play the Rams?
With Robert Woods.
Oh, you didn't double stack?
Robert Woods and Tyler Higbee.
Oh, you did it that way.
So I wanted to leverage Darrell Henderson ownership with Tyler Higbee, because if Darrell Henderson isn't getting the work in the red zone, it's either because it's Sony Michel or it's Tyler Higbee catching red zone catches. So I wanted to try to take advantage of that. And then Robert Woods, I mean, he was significantly cheaper than Cooper Kupp. And a lot of the secondary stacks that I wanted to do and the running backs that I liked, the running backs weren't exactly cheap. I didn't like Khalil Herbert that much. So I had a lot of mid-range running backs, and my wide receiver secondary stacks were relatively expensive. So I needed the salary savings from Robert Woods. And I didn't hate going down to Robert Woods from Cooper Kupp. I think that offense can kind of be treated right now the same way as the Seahawks. Like you can look at Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, same way that you look at DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett when Russell Wilson is active. Obviously, Geno Smith sucks. But I didn't mind doing that. So obviously I got burned badly by that because Cooper Kupp absolutely lit the world on fire. But yeah, I went with that, and then I brought it back with Sterling Shepard. So the foundation was there, but variance.
Right, yeah, I had in single entry 3 max, I played 7 lineups, hand built lineups. I had one out of the 7 was a Stafford, and that was Stafford, Kupp, Woods, Shepard, and Engram. I played that lineup in a smaller, like in the small spy. I think like
So you could
1,100 entries.
Yep.
And then I played that lineup with Hunt, Mixon, Hubbard, and the Ravens defense. So I mean, I just jammed that in. In the double spy, well, we'll talk about the double spy in a second. The game that I was more on was the Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. The problem is that like I played more Cooper than Lamb.
Oh.
But like my best lineup was here's a Prescott, Lamb, Aguilar, and then I filled it in with Henderson, Hubbard, Mixon, RSJ, Tyreek Hill, and the Browns defense.
All right.
So correlating Hill and I thought Hill would be lower owned than Kelsey out of all the pieces on the Chiefs. So I was prioritizing playing Tyreek Hill more than anything else. But I was focused a lot on that, that Cowboys game. In the beginning, it's like Noah Brown and Cedric Wilson are getting like, well, what's going on here? Getting all the targets, right? And then the Patriots, like Jacoby Myers catches a touchdown pass that's called back, so he's never going to score.
No, ever. It's illegal.
Right. But the double spy lineup, the double spy is an 833 entry contest. I could probably even bring up my lineup on the screen instead of on my cheat sheet over here and read it off. You're gonna be shocked at what I played. Most people would look at it and go, I think that was overkill. Let's get to it. I played the Chiefs Washington game in my double spy lineup.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where's the $200 double spy? Okay. But I played it quite differently than the rest of the field.
Okay.
How do you think? Okay, if I said that, how do you think I played the Chiefs Washington game differently than the field? Because you almost had to do like that was the chalkiest game.
Yeah.
Like
I'm gonna guess that you faded Ricky Seals Jones for DeAndre Carter.
No. You're thinking. I did differently in a different way. You're
okay,
thinking
so you did differently in a bad way. So let's hear.
No, I did differently in a good. No, I think I did differently in a good way.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, I'll bring it up on the screen. This is my double spy lineup: Patrick Mahomes, Darrell Williams, Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman, Travis Kelce, Ricky Seals-Jones, Terry McLaurin, and then I don't have any more spots left, so just put in Khalil Herbert in the Ravens defense. So I played a 5-2 lineup. So basically, I'm just saying, I want just give me everything. Just I don't have to worry about it. Give me the rushing, give me the passing, give me the 2 top targets on Washington, even though McLaurin only had 6.8. I fit in. I saw it's like, oh, well, what could fit in there? Oh, Herbert beautiful. There you go. Well, I mean, I doubled my money. I came in 117th with that. That's not for under 1,000 single entry. That is not a. I ran this in lineup HQ. This lineup projected median wise higher than some of my other like other lineups. Like,
I'll bet it did.
Well, I mean, because take a look at who's in here. Darrell Williams was a value, enough of a value.
Ricky Seals-Jones.
Jones was enough of a. Kelce was underpriced at 7,000. McCole Hardman was enough of a value at 4,200. I get Khalil Herbert and the Ravens defense. Ravens were like one of the top projected defensive values. Khalil Herbert was the top running back value. Tyreek Hill was the highest raw points player. McLaurin was projected decently enough, good enough for 7,100. Why doesn't it surprise you that why not just put all of them
in? because that you overcorrelated, and I know that you.
It's an 833 person con. I wouldn't have done this in the regular spy.
I know, and I know that you like purposely put it together, and we talked about it. If it wasn't last week, it was the week before. Where in smaller contests you can overstack because you don't have to be perfect,
right?
And I totally get that. No, you were not perfect.
No, but I didn't. I mean, this lineup did not score badly.
No, it didn't.
Tyreek got 22. Darrell Williams got 23. Who was playing Mahomes? Who was playing? Like, how to get different? Who's playing? People are playing like 3-1s and maybe even 4-1s. Like, who's playing 5-2s? No, I want the game to explode. And I could just cover my eyes and just say, as long as Jordy Fortson and Demarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle don't have anything, right? I'm probably good.
Well, you were probably good, but I think that it limited your ability to be great.
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, in a super small contest, like, yeah, I get it. I hate you.
Do you disagree with 833 not being small enough? Like, if this was like a 150 man contest, I think this would have been a
833 is too big for that. I think that's where it comes down.
But it's big. It's. I would agree. Like, this would be more optimal in a 200 or less.
Yeah. I mean, it would probably that lineup would have been awesome in the Thunderdome for like 50
right, 60, right? For 60, right. A 6 field of 60 or something.
That's awesome for that small people, but for 800, that's too much.
Right, but then all we're arguing is where that line is.
Right, exactly. And we're not even arguing. I mean, you're right that the lineup projected well. It had all of the values that were on the slate. Like, I think really the only thing, and it's funny that like this is the only thing that I could say about it, is like, if you take McCole Hardman out of that, I'm not even mad about it. McCole Hardman was the only piece of that where, like, when you got to him, I was like, too much. Because, like, I don't even care that you had Darrell Henderson with Tyreek Hill and Patrick
Darrell Williams, not Darrell Henderson.
No, sorry, Darrell Williams. Too many Darrells. I don't even care that you had quarterback, running back, wide receiver on the Chiefs. Like, fine, whatever. If their running back is that cheap, then okay. But it was with McCole Hardman when you put 3 wide receivers with there. Like, I just think,
why not? Mahomes has 40 points. He has to go somewhere, right?
The expectation of it, though, is like that.
Well, that's how you win. You win when the Chiefs score. When the game goes 45-17, I win. Right there, you go. Give it to me.
Maybe, unless it's Tyreek Hill getting 3 touchdowns, Travis Kelce getting 2, and then Darrell Williams getting 2 as well.
Yeah, but I don't need all of that. All I need is Cooper Kupp not to put up, and CeeDee Lamb not to put up almost 40 points.
Well, unfortunately for you.
Well, of course. But Michael Dompier in the chat says, with only 800 entrants, do you have to get that different? If you take a look at the ownership of this lineup, it's not like it's even that. Like that's why the whole thing when I was mentioning, like, how did I get different? And you're like, did you play like Byron Pringle? Like the ownership of this lineup, I've Mahomes at 17. This is the double spy ownership. Mahomes was 17%, Darrell Williams 13, Herbert 24, Tyreek 20, McLaurin 23, McCole Hardman 18, Ricky Seals-Jones is 46% owned, Travis Kelce is 33% owned, and the Ravens defense is 6% owned.
And you weren't.
I'm still playing I'm not getting different in players. I'm just getting different by just playing all of them. Right?
I mean, that's a strategy. For sure.
I made $200 off of this.
No, I hear you. Yeah, I mean that's a good day's work for sure. Like I said, Mecole Hardman I think is the only thing that
who
really
am I going to play in that spot? I could have played Darnell Mooney as a one, but then I'm playing Herbert and Mooney together. Do I want to do that? Like, who do I play at 4,200 in this one?
Look, you can't say, do I want to play Herbert and Mooney together when you played a 5-2? Like you obviously.
So you're saying I should have made it a 4-3? I should have played De'Ami Brown and paid up at defense.
You could have.
Would that have been better? I didn't want to play three guys from a team without the quarterback.
But
I'll play four guys from the team with the quarterback. No, because McLaurin and Seals-Jones together, that's only two.
Yeah, but like if you're saying that, okay, no, I agree with you. I hear you. I get it.
I understand the concept. You may not have loved my implementation.
Right. So I agree with the concept in theory, not in practice. Like if you plug that into an optimizer, the projections look good on paper.
Well, why not play? So who cares?
On paper, it's like it looks good, but like in practice, you see it and you're like, I can't play that.
The projection was great. Let the game go on.
I know it was. I know.
I got 11 out of the Ravens, and I got 19 out of Khalil Herbert.
What more
can I want out of this lineup? Other than
I was so mad about the Khalil Herbert thing.
Why? He was a good play. Why are people saying that he wasn't a? Who else is going to play? I mean, who else is going to play on that team? And they're obviously not letting Fields cook.
We saw the Bears like 3 weeks ago not put up 100 yards on offense.
Oh, wow. One game. Wow. Way to go with those sample sizes.
But my point is that the Bears suck, dude. Like, I don't like playing.
Yeah, but if he's going to get 95% of the work and 5 targets out of the base, he's 4,600.
He is 4,600, and he was 25% owned on a team that was a 7-point home underdog on a team that sucks. Like, we talk about the ceilings on running backs, and we talk about the projections and the expectations of running backs being so heavily tied to touchdowns. So, like, even at 4,600, if he gets you 12, most people are happy with 12.
And then he gets me a touchdown like he did, and he gets me 19.
Right. But that's the
running back variance. So who cares?
You don't, but you accept running back variance when they're not highly owned. At 25% owned, I thought he was a great fade.
I'm not paying Austin Eckler's price for running back variance. I'll play 4,600 for running back variance.
Not when he's highly owned. I disagree with that. Okay. I think it was too high owned to take that chance on him on a team like the Bears. It doesn't mean
to play none of them though. I mean,
well, no, but
there are lineups that he fits in.
Sure.
And I played a lot of these types of lineups, quarterback, running back, wide receiver lineups this past week.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I played a lot more correlated lineups yesterday than I normally do because it's a 10-game slate, so there's less teams, so there's less ways for other teams to have this one-off that you must have type of thing. And there was more likely because of that a team puts up 30 plus points, like their quarterback and their running back to get there. So like I played some Stafford, Henderson, Cup lineups.
Yeah.
I played some, what else did I play? I mean, obviously I played Mahomes, Williams, Tyreek type of lineups.
Yeah.
I played like Burrow, Mixon, Chase type line. I mean, like one team just goes out and puts up 35 points and just like, especially with running back, but I'm not like triple stacking though. Like that's the main thing. Like I'm not playing 4 guys. To me, the quarterback gets there with like 30 points. The running back gets there with 22 points and the receiver gets there with 32 points. And like, it's 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And the quarterback has 303 because obviously some tight end or some third wide receiver or something gets it. And I'm more likely to do that on smaller slates than on larger slates because the amount of options that you have. Now, 10 games is not like small, but it's still smaller than 12 and still smaller than 13 or 14. So we have these bye weeks coming up. I'm much more likely to just like, can I take a bet on a game? Can I take a bet on 2 games? And how do I weave those 2 games into a lineup?
Yeah.
More so than it's a 15 game slate. There's 6 games that have a 50 plus total. And it's like mostly I'm going to be skinny stacking, maybe not even having run backs in those because like, dude, there's so many different players from all these half the games on the slate that could put up 30 plus points that why am I tying myself half my lineup to 1 game only or 2 games only? But on the smaller slates now that the bye weeks are coming up, I think these lineups. So when you see the quarterback, running back, wide receiver lineups and you go, oh, that's a bad lineup. It's not a bad lineup, right? Obviously the running back ceiling is negatively correlated to the wide receiver ceiling because they're stealing touchdowns. And if it's rushing touchdowns, they're stealing from the ceiling of the quarterback. But how much of a ceiling do you need? Like,
well, and I think that one, I'll say that like another thing about the correlation of quarterback, running back, and wide receiver this week, there weren't really any running backs that projected super duper well. I mean, if you look across things, most people that I talked to, I didn't have a single running back over 20 fantasy points this week.
Hunt.
And well, I mean, yeah, Hunt. If you
no one. Okay, I think I'll rephrase it for you. It's not that no one projected well. It's just that no one stood out other than Hunt, I believe.
Right.
Like you had running backs you wanted to play. Like I didn't feel bad at running back because it's like you have Herbert as a value. You got even Darrell Williams as a value. You got Henderson, Hubbard, Taylor Swift, Mixon, Booker even.
You had every running back on the planet in the 5,500, 6,500 range.
Right, exactly. But not much separation between them.
Right.
Which flattened out the ownership. So like to me, like running back wasn't the priority. It's just as long as you have 2, take a chance on two of them, and you're fine. But if they're all projecting very similarly in that range, I'm much more likely to just correlate them to another piece in my lineup because I'm not giving up much projection. Like if I play Darrell Henderson in the lineup, then I have Sterling Shepard. But if I have Chuba Hubbard in a lineup, then I have Adam Thielen. And like the differences between these guys' projections are between the 2v2 is like less than a point.
Yeah.
But now they're correlated in the same game. It's like, it's the times where I need to correlate 2 sides of a game and you're giving up 4 points in projection to do so. That's when correlation is likely not worth it. But with everyone kind of similarly projected in certain ranges, it's like I'm much more likely to just weave those lineups together because doing so you don't lose much projection, if any. You don't lose much ownership, if any, and you add a little bit of correlation. So like you get that little bit of bonus there. So why not do it? But I think a lot of people, because we get the question all the time about like, oh, correlated lineups, not correlated lineups. When do you add the secondary stack? Like that's the determination of how much projection are you giving up for the sake of correlation, and is it worth it? I don't know how much it's worth it on Spurs specific slates or whatever, but we explained just now in yesterday's slate that with we got like 6 running backs that are all in the same range that have somewhere between a 16 and 18 point projection at very similar ownerships, right? Close enough between, 12 and 22% owned, depending, not even somewhere around 15 to 18. Like, well, when do I correlate and when do I not correlate? Well, is there a piece of the other games that are all in the same price that all project about the same? Well, then if they're all, and play whatever you want at that point, like just mix and match or whatever. But it's those times where it's like, I'm gonna correlate. I'm gonna use the bring back, right? Everyone's like, oh, when do you use a run back? It's like, well, what does it contribute to the lineup? It contributes correlation, but what are you giving up for that? There's always going to be a trade-off. So you're going to put in the run back, right? Like I played some Stafford lineups without Giants in it. So I know a lot of people got burned because they played Kadarius Toney. and he got injured in the first quarter.
Mhm.
And they're like, I got Stafford Cup Tony. Thanks. It's like, well, run the lineups. You could see that Stafford lineups, or even like Prescott. Like I ran some Prescott lineups without Myers, without a run back, or with Hunter Henry as the run back in the tight end spot. Because if I'm going to play a guy in the 3K range, like why not play Henry over whatever? But you have to look and see how much projection am I giving up? Is that correlation worth it? In certain teams, it may not be worth it enough, or it drops your projection 4 points, and you have to make that up by playing Kareem Hunt or Khalil Herbert. You have to play the higher projected, higher own guy to raise that projection up. You know, if you drop 4 points by adding the correlation, you gain 3 points back by adding the high projected players into your lineup. And then you have to take a look and go, well, now what's the ownership? Mm-hmm. Right now you may put it up on the level where now you're sacrificing 1 point and your actually ownership is like twice as high. Maybe not that high, because the only way to get the correlation is by jamming in high owned, high projected plays. So you take a look at that lineup and go, I think I can make better lineups. Or you could play it in your 150 set or something. That's not saying it's a bad lineup, but there are probably better lineups than that you could play, higher EV lineups. So you end up making certain teams like Kareem Hunt. Like the Cardinals did not project well on their side. So anytime that Hunt was in a lineup with AJ Green or Rondell Moore or something like DeAndre Hopkins, it dropped the projection only because like Hunt's projected well, but this Cardinals player is like dropping your lineup by 3 points. Mm-hmm. So in those lineups, but these Cardinals are also low owned. So it gives you correlation, it drops your ownership. But now you need to make that up. So where are you making that up? So now you're putting in Darrell Henderson, you're putting in Cooper Kupp, you're putting in high projected players. And now that ownership is going to start coming back up this way. And you have to see whether or not the projection is worth that ownership. So really, when people ask when it really comes down to lineups, not players. It's James, people get pissed off at me. When I they ask me a question, I go, it depends on the lineup. And they go, that didn't help me. Like, this is what we're explaining. Like, yeah, I can't help you because it does depend on the lineup and on the contest that you're playing. Right. Because we had that whole conversation with the double spy. If you saw me play this Chiefs onslaught to the nth degree into like the Millie Maker, like that would be stupid.
Yeah. Terrible. Right. Terrible. Yeah. When people ask me for help and they say, well, what do you prefer? Like they give a 1v1 or they give a 2v2. And I'm like, most of the time that 1v1 or the 2v2, they're like, oh, well, I don't know who to play between like Darrell Henderson and DeAndre Swift. Like, who do I choose? I'm like, DeAndre Swift projects for like 0.5 points better than Darrell Henderson.
According to you, not
yeah.
But I mean, your answer is whoever projects higher. That's given no other information. It's going to be whoever.
Even if it's half a point, like, what do you want me to say there? Like, did you want me to say that like DeAndre Swift is that much better play? Because Darrell Henderson's ceiling is higher, but DeAndre Swift's median projection is a little bit higher, but they project flip a freaking coin. A 2v2 where there's like a 1 point difference, like flip a coin, dude. You're probably not gaining anything by me giving you a side. But if you show me a lineup and you show me that you have a 2v2 between a very high ownership combo and a very low ownership combo, but you say, here's the lineup, and I see that like you have no ownership across the entire lineup, choose the higher ownership side and you're fine.
Choose the higher projected side.
That if it's higher projected,
even if it's higher owned, right?
Right. Because then at that point, like I have context of the entire lineup. I have context of leverage that you're gaining or losing. I have context of like why you are playing these two guys against each other. And 1v1 is even worse. I hate 1v1s more than most things on this planet because the vast majority of the time there's not even an answer. And if there is an answer, it's which one is projected higher. And if you ask me between these two players, which one you should play, and one projects for 5 points higher, and you're like, well, which one should I play? I'm like, why are you asking me this?
Right. The higher projected one.
The one that projects for 5 points high. Oh, well, what about this? What about this? No, dude, all of that is taken into account in projections. Like the model knows those things. It doesn't care. This guy's projected 5 points higher. Play Jamar Chase.
Yeah, but it's the third Sunday on and cloudy weather. This guy is it always runs for 80 yards when he has his red shoe on or something.
T.Y. Hilton against the Texans, dude. T.Y. Hilton against the Texans every time. It's annoying that he got there too. That's annoying. But yeah, it like 1v1s, man. If you ask any content provider or blender, because you're not a content provider,
we're doing what are we doing right now? We're doing content.
I meant like projections and stuff. Anybody who like builds out projections, provides projections and stuff. If you ask a 1v1 to that person and like the answer is blatant based on the projections, just please don't. Just like if you have a bias of the player who's projected for lower points and you don't, and like you're going to make an argument and say, oh, well, what about this, and this? It's like, I'm just going to tell you, go do whatever you want to do. Because if you're going to ignore the projection and if you're going to ignore the projection set, then like, I don't know what to do for you.
Well, but that's why there's still an edge.
Right.
Right. Hey, bro, high five. Jordan, I noticed you had 150 lineups created. I had 180 lineups created. Do you just slap that into the quick slant? No. I mean, no. I mean, in my lineups, I had 180. I had like 9. I play all different types of contests. So I play like 30 lineups into the flea flicker. I play 90 into the slant. I play 3 into the $15 3 max. I play 5 into the $33 5. Like it's all in my CSV, and I organize that. And I a lot of times I'm just randomly putting them in. Mm-hmm. They're all based on a certain contest size, and most of them are large enough that the slant style lineups are fine across the board. And then I just cut and paste and just wherever it ends up. I mean, that's really, what else am I supposed to do? I used to organize it by field size, from lower field, smaller field contests with smaller field, still a field size of 12,000 still, to the larger field, which is the play action. Because I'll always play 20 lineups into that, and then sort by ownership in the output. And I'm playing my higher owned lineups into the smaller field and the lower owned lineups. They're all lower owned lineups to some extent, but the lowest into the largest field stuff. But the problem with that, you can do it that way, is that your diversification between contests gets kind of warped. Mm-hmm. Right. So like on the bottom, those bottom 20 lineups into the play action have like, if I have a Donovan Peoples-Jones one-off, or, like that's going to be in those, because it's going to be players that project fairly poorly, but they're correlated with something, right? And they're all at the bottom. And then my top lineups are all going to be the higher owned, higher projected lineups, which means like if I organize by field size, like all my $33 entry lineups are going to be practically the same lineup with a 3v3, right? Like because they're going to project, and like instead of having, let's say, 4 Patrick Mahomes lineups and 1 Dak Prescott lineup into the $33 5 max, I'd rather have one of each. Have a Mahomes lineup, have a Lamar lineup, have a Dak lineup, have a Stafford, right? Now I could do that manually, but that's a pain in the ass. So I'm more likely to sort by ownership and then spread out. I randomly put like in halves of my CSVs. Like in the top half, I'll randomly put in 10 entries from the play action, half of my slant, like half of everything into the top half, and then randomize. And then the bottom half, I take the other half and I rent. So now I have half my lineups all over the place, but it's still more of the large field lineups towards the bottom, but in a more random manner. And then when I cut and paste my players, my lineup set over it, it's just wherever the hell it ends up, to me, to avoid type of like the contents clumping. Do you have to do that? No. I'm doing that more for a diversification standpoint, where I'm sitting there going, why do all 3 of my $15 bubble screen lineups have the same stat in it? Right? Because if they were together in the CSV and those lineups, it's a 3v3 defense and a secondary correlation off in the same lineup 3 times. It's like, I'd much rather have one in there, one in the slant, and one in the play action. Like like that. And I'm more likely to get it doing like, the RAND function on stuff. But that's the diversification. There's no strategy to that. The best thing to do is to simulate the contest and play the right lineups into the right contests. But like the reason why my 7 lineups for single entry 3 max are separate, because those are the only contests that are under like 5 figures of entries. It's like once I get past 10,000 entries into a contest, I kind of treat them all the same way.
Right.
Kind of like it's 10K plus. To me, is there a benefit of treating the 10K, 12K level contest to the 50K, 100K level contest? Yes. But I don't think it's worth the time. It's not worth the time for me to separate them like that. But it is worth the time for me to separate from 10,000 down to 5,000 or 1,000 or 500.
I usually do like 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. And then after 10,000, it's like, whatever. It's
whatever. I don't see any discern. I mean, you can. 10,000 is different than 200,000.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. But if I were to think about it that way, I'd have to think about it that way. And I don't MME often, but when I do, I think about it that way. And then I would have to do that for NBA. I have to do it for MLB. And frankly, I don't have the time to do that for either one of those sports. Like I could do it for NFL. I could not do it for daily sports. So putting that into a process, like it's just, that's not worth it to me.
Joe Clary says that my ROI is only 10% for this season in cash games. Well, number one, so there's only been 6 weeks, so that's not much of a sample size. If you
also 10% is great.
Is great, right? So
yeah.
If you're playing low stakes, 10% is very good. If you're playing high stakes, you're God. So obviously that's not sustainable. So
right.
If you're playing high stakes cash games in NFL, and your long term, not a 6-week period, long term ROI is 10%, you're the greatest cash game player on the planet, probably by double.
People have very, very warped expectations of what their ROI should be in cash.
Right.
Ultra
in low
warped.
Stakes, however, I think I was able to achieve 15% in low stakes cash in all across all sports.
Yeah.
But of course, remember, I was playing I can't play low stakes past 2019.
Right.
So this is 2015 to 2018 DFS, which probably was a little bit easier, but not as easy as 2012. But I didn't play back then. So I achieved a 15% ROI. So and people look at 15 and go, "That's only 15." Like, how much of a favorite do you think you are in these? I mean, like, even against the worst players. Like if you're against an average player in a head-to-head, an average one, at best, I'm 60-40. At best.
Yeah.
At best, most likely probably 58-42.
Yeah.
And in head-to-heads, you have to, in order to be profitable, you have to be 55% or better.
So there's your 3% ROI.
Right. But that compounds over time because you're going to be playing every day. Now, if you're up against if you're up against bad players, they still have like a 32 to 35% chance of beating you.
I was going to say you're probably 70-75, maybe.
But those would be awful players.
Yeah, those are players that are playing like injured players.
Right. 75-25. If you have an injured player in the spot, you probably have a 0 and random variance. You'll win 1 out of 4 times still. Right. So like you can't be that bad. You can't be that much of a favorite where your ROI is ridiculous in cash games. You can be in GPPs. It's just that obviously realizing that it takes a long time. Right. Especially for the large field stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the ROI of cash and GPP of the best players in the world, I mean, like you're not even 10% is still a good year for Asima because of like how much
10% is a godlike year for Asima.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's fantastic. So like 10%, people just think that because they see, 50K wins and 100K wins and stuff like that. But it's like, dude, they're playing the 50, 60K per slate in NFL or more than that, depending on who it is. Like the ROIs are not that high, man. 10% is really, really good over a year.
And understand that that this is not an annualized ROI. So people think of 10% ROI, go, oh, I'm gonna play with $10,000, and then I'm gonna what? So at the end of the year, I have 11,000.
Yeah.
Like no. It's the ROI means ROI on any entry that you play.
Yep.
So if you're gonna play, for instance, that's why everything it's like compounding interest in the stock market and a bank account. But understand that it's compound. Obviously, your ROI, like in a small sample size, means nothing. So like you can't, if you knew you had let's say you have a 5% ROI in cash games, which is great. And you played $1,000 a day. Okay. So that means your expected return would be $50
per day,
right? Your expected return. Now you're not going to return $50 because if you're playing, let's say you're just playing double ups, like you're going to get 2,000 or 0. I mean, like it's going to be one or the other, like that type of thing. But the average over the course of 10 years is going to be $50 for that 1,000. Now, obviously, once you put the $50 in, you start with 1,000, right? But you're probably not starting with 1,000. You start with 10,000. You play 10% of your bankroll, so you're playing 1,000. Your expected return is $50. Well, now your bankroll is 10,050. So now you're playing $1,005 tomorrow, right? Because you're playing a certain percentage of your bankroll. And as that bankroll goes up, you play more and more, which means now you get the power of compounding one on top of each other. And then when you start, if you lose a couple of slates in a row, your volume goes down, right? It goes up and down like that. So a 5% ROI, if you have a 5% ROI, and you're playing decent enough volume, I mean, look at my NBA from last year. Like, dude, I started with $20,000, right, as my fictional bankroll, right? And I was playing 10% per slate in NBA across 3 sites, head-to-heads, like really diversified. Like my ROI was like, well, I'll bring that up. What was it? We'll see. My ROI was 7.61%. And it mostly came from FanDuel because FanDuel games are really soft. I actually lost money on Draftkings overall, minus 1.61%. So take a look at this graph. So this is the power of, like it goes up, it goes down, and you can see the net total on the side, right? It goes up, it goes down. Start with whatever. Scale this to whatever it is. I mean, it does. Oh, you need $20,000. It's like, no, it could be $1,000, but that means you're playing $100. And if you win that day and you double your money or whatever, if you're playing head to head, you're not going to purely double. You go from 1,000 to 1,200, right? Or to 1,100, and now you play $110, right? And then if you lose, you have to go back down to 100. And you keep on going up and down, but that's a 7% ROI. I was able to, in the course of 90 slates overall, around 90 slates overall, turn $20,000 into a little over 40,000 with a 7% ROI. So you look at 20,000 and you go, what's 7% of 20,000? What are we talking about? $1,400?
Yeah, 1,400. Yeah.
Right. And you go, oh, you're gonna play the whole. No, because these ROI doesn't mean annualized. It means on like that. That was your average return on every slate. Mm-hmm. So 5% is 5% is great. 5-7%, anything, 10%. It depends obviously on the stakes. Obviously on FanDuel and NBA Cash, I'm not restricted yet, so I'm playing a lot of $1 and $2 games. I'm assuming my ROI is going to go down on FanDuel once I hit the limit of that they won't let me play those games anymore. DraftKings, I can't. Right, that's the difference. Like the difference between DraftKings and FanDuel for me last year is that the games on DraftKings, I can't play the low stakes, so I have to play the high stakes, and I ended up down minus 1.61% doing so. I was up a little on Yahoo, and then heavily on FanDuel, which, based on now with the MPE on FanDuel, that's probably more likely. And you see here, even on my chart, as I saw that the games on FanDuel were much easier than the ones on DraftKings, I was devoting more of my bankroll towards it. And hence why I was making more money on FanDuel. But that should be your expectation in cash games if you're a good player. 5%, right? If your Roto Tracker says and anything in the double digits for cash games and you're playing anything above $5, like you're one of the best in the world. And it's like, well, I've been doing that for I played an entire season of NFL. It's like we're talking about 18 slates. Like you could run hot, you could go 15-3 in NFL. That's not that's not sustainable, right? I'm going to say that outright. That's not realistic. But of course, I'm going to say that, and what ends up happening in most people's minds that don't have the experience is they think they're the exception. Right, James?
Everybody's the exception.
Everyone's the exception. Right? You bink a large field GPP and you go, yeah, now I can max enter everything because I'm the exception. Right? And then you find out that no, you're not the exception. Anything to add? No, you just.
No, dude, you nailed it. I
nailed it. Okay.
You're good.
People say I talk too much, but I nailed it.
No, I mean, you talk a lot because you're right. Doesn't matter.
Well, I talk a lot because no one interrupts me.
Well, you're hard to interrupt.
Well,
I will say that.
Quickly, right? Because I don't pause, so it's like
you don't. You're a battery.
Yeah, but that's the reason. I think that's the main reason why I end up interrupting other people is because I'm so used to talking, like coming from New York, Brooklyn, like we talk very quickly. Yeah. We talk bluntly and we talk with our hands. And I'm not like once I hear a slight pause, you have to be done because you wouldn't constantly go right. I mean, that's the point. So anytime, like, I'm on the ASA show and, Stewart is going off on something and he kind of like meanders off and I hear like a 3-second pause. It's like, well, this is unbearable. Right?
Yeah,
3 seconds of silence.
Time talk.
So you got to jump in. Right.
And I do when I have something to say.
Right. Of course. But I hope that people jump in. I want people to jump in. Apparently Kareem Hunt is out at least 3 weeks now. Adam Schefter.
There it is.
Right.
There it is.
So showdown Dearness Johnson. Who we playing? We playing Felton on the
No, man. Dearness Johnson. All in.
No, the thing is that this injury is happening close enough that they'll probably price those guys up.
Yeah, they won't.
Right. On FanDuel, they won't. On FanDuel, they'll be 5K.
No.
So, James, where can people get your Cortland Sutton projections?
PaterDFS.com. Cortland Sutton has been crushing. So if you want to continue to play him when people are not, come sub over at Pater, as well as having projections that are over industry standard on every other sport. So make sure that you come check out the site. I have a couple free tools. I'm going to do some free models this Friday as well. So look forward to that. And then you can find me on Pater_DFS over on Twitter.
And obviously, you could also find our work. Me and James did an audio course, 15 hours long. All these concepts that we talk about, that I talk about on the pregame show, that we talk about on Mondays, are all in the course. So if you all want them all in one place, nice, easy way to learn, structured. You can listen to it over and over again. Theory of daily fantasy sports, how to think like a professional DFS player. NBA is coming up. It applies to NBA too. It applies to everything. Game objectives, player selection, expected value, leverage, correlation, construction, risk management, exploits, and psychology. Go pick that up. 15 hours of fundamental concepts of expert level DFS gameplay at theoryofdfs.com. Give me those thumbs on your way out the door. I'll wave my thumbs at you. I'll be back on later tonight on the show, on the pre-lock show with Will for the showdown slate tonight. So hit that notification bell to know when we go live. So for James McCool, Jordan Cooper, answering your DFS strategy questions as always on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.